You ever heard the saying that readers are leaders? The more you learn, the more you earn. I agree with that to a point. It used to be that I would just buy every single book that people recommended and read it religiously. And then I realized a lot of them kind of say the same thing. I almost think it's better to read one book 5 times than 5 books 1 time. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're like, well, Clark, you're gonna recommend to me new books. Yeah, but if I had to read these 5 over and over again, these are the ones I would reread and do go back to. And so in this video, we are going over the 5 books. Don't cheat. Don't cheat, guys, don't look. I'm gonna lay out each one, and I'm also gonna give you a big kahuna, giant takeaway from each, so you get some ahas and a little preview of what you're getting yourself into, all right? Very first book, we got Jonathan Haidt's The Happiness Hypothesis. What 10 ideas actually work to make people happy? One massive idea I get from this book as I was rereading it is that ultimate freedom can make you freaking miserable, okay? Now, I know this sounds like a paradox because some of you are in jobs right now that you don't like, and you're like, well, if I didn't go to that 9 to 5 or, open the freaking Zoom meetings all day, I'd be a lot happier, Clark. Or some people, they're in relationships and they think like ultimate freedom would be awesome if they weren't. Whatever you want to apply that to. In this book, it talks about one study that I found fascinating. One dominant factor that looked at suicide rates amongst people. You know what that dominant factor was? Constraints. That the people who were more likely or less likely to off themselves, it came down to having constraints, having something outside of themselves that they were responsible for. That if we don't have any responsibilities, in other words, if we're totally free, we can also be totally miserable. I know this from personal experience. When I quit my job and I was in my mom's basement, 30 grand in debt, like technically I was absolutely free. But I would wake up every day like thinking I had to start this business, right, with this overwhelming, crippling anxiety. Because I'm like, well, I'm starting from scratch. I have all this freedom in the world, but where do I even start? And then your head gets spinning and blah, 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 blah. It wasn't until I actually went back and took a part-time job working as a middle school counselor with kids that gave me some constraints, took up 20, 30 hours a week, that I was able to do this business because now, instead of having 12 or 18 hours a day to just work on this business, right? I only had about 5. So I had constraints and I was more productive. Talks about in nursing homes. Patients who have something as simple as an animal or even a plant to water every day, they're much less likely to get illnesses or die early. They have something to take care of. They have a reason. And the whole book kind of goes over some ideas like that, where we think we want this, but actually science says it's this. Don't fall into the trap that doing anything you want all the time, me, is the key to happiness. That could be hedonistic and lack fulfillment, because if you're just living for yourself, eventually that's going to get boring. Living for others, having constraints, is actually healthy and scientifically proven. The right ones to make you happy. Okay, moving on. We need a prop for this next one. When most people go about change, habits, they think about tactics. Give me the books to read. Give me the techniques. What meditation to do. What manifestation technique. If you've watched this channel this year, and something I came to realize is that those are the least important. This right here. And you're like, Clark, where's the book? It's coming. Let me tell you, you need foreplay. You can't just rush into things. Most people approach change from 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna take some actions and I hope it changes my beliefs or my stories inside. And then, hopefully if it lasts long enough, I'll change my identity. But real change in your life happens when you go 1, 2, 3. At the identity level, you rewire yourself, okay? And you adopt a new identity. You create this ahead of time. It knocks over your stories, and then your actions fall in alignment. In other words, this is the secret to change. The identity route. Most people go like this, and they wonder why they're stuck. Does that make sense? One book that opened my eyes to this, right, is our 4th book right here, Atomic Habits, James Clear. Everyone in the comments were telling me to read this for probably a year since it came out, and I was like, yeah, I'll get to it, and then I finally did. And I was like, holy moly, that's a great book. But it talks about this right here. The goal is not to stop reducing cigarettes, actions. The goal is to become a non-smoker. The goal is not to put on your running shoes and run a marathon. No, the goal is to become a runner. In the book, James Clear says that every action is a vote for the person that you want to become. So I love that frame in your life today. Think about that, big or small. Every action you do, or you could say every thought or belief or judgment, casts a vote for the person that you want to become. And again, those votes, if you collect enough evidence for something, they influence your identity level. So we can approach this of 2 ways. We can create this identity and then start casting votes for the person we want to be and reinforce it in. Now, what's really crazy is most people don't realize this and they cast votes against themselves out of alignment with what they say they want to do and who they want to become. And that's why a lot of people have this ick in their life show up, right? There's a gap. It's like who I view myself as and what I'm actually doing right here. And the bigger this gap is, the more ick we feel inside, the more depression can creep in, stress, anxiety, overthinking, imposter syndrome. So the secret is changing your identity, rewiring it, and closing this gap right here. Once you do that, it's really easy to get up and live life and feel awesome because you're in integrity with what you say you're doing and what you're actually doing. Does that make sense? Atomic Habits, great book. And if you want to know more about like our identity shifting process, again, to influence this, this is what our whole metamorphic coaching program is. I'll link down below a quick little video that you can watch. It's free, no sign up required, and it goes a bit deeper into stuff like this. And then of course, if you want to apply, please feel free to do so. And if it's a good fit, I'll hop on the phone with you and we'll just talk more. 2020 was a crazy year for finances. I don't know if any of you saw the stock market, right? Just went. I also heard like something 35% of all US dollars got printed in like the last 6 months of 2020 or something like that. From a financial standpoint in 2020, it was the best of times and the worst of times for a lot of people. A lot of people lost their jobs, but a lot of people got filthy stinking rich and if you had your investments in the right place. Realize that investing, saving money, financial security, all this stuff that we view as kind of like boring or too complex isn't as complex as it is. You just got to know the game so you can join people instead of saying, oh, that's just for like rich people or elite people. The system's actually set up for pretty much anyone to win if you know the rules. I don't mean to rant here, but like I was talking to someone in Seattle, where I'm from, regardless of political beliefs, right? But it's super blue. And so I'm talking to this woman and she's just complaining about how they're rich and they have stocks and they're so evil. And I was like, wait, you know you can invest in the stock market too. It's not like there's an income cap. You can buy a freaking share of AMC for $8, or Apple, or Tesla, or now you can even buy partial shares. My point is don't be intimidated by it. And so I am telling you that is a very long-winded way of saying our third book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Ramit Sethi. I've been recommending this one probably a couple years now. And this really goes into some more of those rules, right? Of how to kind of set yourself up for 10, 20, 30 years from now so that you're going to be well off. It doesn't require insane amount of smarts or even insane amounts of income. It requires insane amounts of discipline. You make $1 million and you spend it. How much did you make? Zero. Goose egg. It's better off to make 100,000, save 40. You are richer at the end of the year than that person who made $1 million and spent $1 million. It's not about the money you make, it's about the money you keep. And I love that this book emphasizes that and gives you really practical ways to influence it using compounding in the long term. If you love it so much, Clark, why don't you marry it? Book number 2, you know what this is? Not a book, but more of a process, something that you can do in active form. There comes a point in your life where you realize, and you have to be brutally honest with yourself, if like, I'm consuming info out of education, which it seems like, reading, coaching, videos, seminars, motivation, that seems like education, right? And it can be. But if we're not applying it over here, if you don't have fruits to show for it, what is it really? It's entertainment. At a certain point, I find with a lot of people, just to be brutally honest, and I had this in myself, we spend so much time in education that it becomes entertainment. You can listen to podcasts all day long thinking they're educational, right? But if they're not making your life better objectively, it really is entertainment. Where do we flip the switch towards having all this potential over here of education that we have in our brain, right? And really applying it in our life to see the benefits? Well, you need a tool to cross this right here. The best tool I've ever found, and I would implore you to take seriously and just give it a shot this year, is this right here. 8 by 11.5 sketchbook right here, our journal. Now we posted the ultimate guide to it this year. I'll link down below, or you can just find it. It takes 2 seconds. I was just telling the members of my Metamorphic coaching program where we meet live and do calls and stuff. This is like our big theme right now. So many people, so many voices, so many influencers, right? They're trying to influence you. They're trying to do that. You look for answers. And you look outside of yourself. But how often do we ever stop and listen for them? That's powerful. Stop looking for the answers and maybe it's time to start listening for them. And I think you'll see your life finally flip the switch from potential of education, right? Entertainment to action, closing that gap. Number 1 book, this was a toss-up. I have 2 that I'll give you, and one is kind of like, what the heck? And I guess we'll start with that. I really didn't want to like this book as much as I did because I saw it in like Urban Outfitters and I'm like, I don't want to be that cliche like millennial reading that book. But I mean, don't judge it by its cover, right? I was so stoked I read this. Art of Not Giving an F, right? Mark Manson. And it was just a really fun, lighthearted read, all about kind of self-development and how these ideas, what that rant we just went on with the journal pretty much, like the art or the science of improving yourself, the good intention behind that is like, yeah, I'm gonna be better, right? But if we never apply it, we just have these to-dos in our head that we turn on ourselves and we beat ourselves up and we feel guilty on because we're not applying it. That even if something has a positive intent doesn't mean it's positive for us. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. That book was awesome. Also have a book review of this that you can find on our channel if you just search, pop right up. Again, the toss-up is between that and Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about the M word in here, meditation. Right? And I know like some people love it, some people hate it, and I've been in the hate camp for a while. Not that I didn't see the benefits of it, but it took me like 10 books of how to meditate, okay, and getting it all right before I finally had enough willpower to sit down and do it consistently. And like something I struggle with to this day is meditation. But I find that having some science behind it, like this book gives you, if you're analytically wired like myself, you want to know the why behind you do something, this book breaks it down. Something as little as like 8 weeks, 12 minutes a day, just meditating can have significant, like insane benefits to rewiring your brain and their neural pathways. Places of your brain start lighting up, like the empathy centers, the parts that make you more loving, more compassionate, more patient. And other pathways start kind of reducing a little bit, like your amygdala, which is the fight or flight, right? Or all these like judgmental centers, whatever parts are contributing to that in the brain kind of reduce. So if you want some science behind why you should meditate, or just like how that can help you kind of shift into the 2.0 version of yourself, the book is fantastic. It is a little dense. There are some parts where you really gotta like pay attention. You can't just be like, you know, kind of zoning out. I find nevertheless this to be fascinating. And again, we have a book summary on this channel if you want to just get a quick overview of it. See if it's a book before you really dive in that you want to commit to. Comment down below with your #1 book that you want to read this year or you'd recommend to others. I want to know in the comments down below. You want to learn more about our coaching? Feel free to watch the video and apply down below. That's it for me. Stop settling, start living. See ya.